One, I'm Susan Harris with New Buildings Institute. I'll be your moderator today. We're recording this session and we'll share the link and presentation slides with you in a follow-up email. I'd like to share a little bit about New Buildings Institute, also known as NBI. We've been working to improve the energy efficiency of the built environment for over 25 years. We collaborate with a variety of partners on leading edge strategies, innovative technologies, and best practices. I'd like to point out a few things on your dashboard. If you hover your mouse towards the bottom of your screen, you'll notice that there's an area for chat. You can click on that, chat with each other. Feel free to drop a note about where you're tuning in from, perhaps
Hey guys,
what
we're
you like to
broadcasting.
cook in your kitchens there. Also on your dashboard, there's a Q&A. If you have any questions for our chefs today, please put your question in the Q&A. It'll just make it easier for us to find that question to pose it to our guests here. Also, if you find the chat to be too distracting, you can always click on that again to make it disappear. Next slide, please. This event is a collaborative effort supported by San Diego Learn and PGE. The Learn program is a San Diego-based workforce education and training program that is partnered with New Buildings Institute and the Advanced Water Heating Initiative to offer free energy efficiency and electrification webinars. Visit their website at sandiegolearn.com. We are also receiving support from Pacific Gas and Electric Company, and Chef Mark will be talking a little bit more about that in just a little bit. We have brief surveys from both of those organizations. Please do respond to those surveys. They help us to understand your interests and make decisions about future events. Here we're letting you know a little bit about what we'll talk about today. This is a special event. We have our chefs live streaming from the Food Service Tech Center. Such a cool opportunity to actually see the technology they'll be talking to us about. Commercial kitchens and their gas-fired appliances are a good place to prioritize while working to reduce long-term costs and eliminate greenhouse gas emissions. As noted on the Frontier Energy's website, a restaurant uses up to 3 times as much energy as other commercial buildings. One piece of equipment, for example, a single fryer, can use as much energy as an entire house. With efficient electric equipment, there are added benefits, including faster cooking times, better work conditions, and every dollar of energy saved can go towards higher profits. We have Chef Mark and Chef Matt here with us today to talk about electric equipment for commercial kitchens. Chef Mark Duesler has 26 years in food service and 20 years in kitchens for various full-service restaurants, including small family-owned operations, multi-course fine dining, and chef-driven farm-to-table concepts. He now oversees the Food Service Technology Center's Try Before You Buy program and serves as a senior program advisor. Chef Matt Dailey is the CEO and co-owner of PLAYTE Kitchen, a hands-on cooking school that empowers home cooks through interactive in-person and virtual classes. All class instruction take place in an all-electric kitchen powered by induction cooking ranges, demonstrating that delicious food and responsible energy use go hand in hand. And with that, I'll now hand the mic over to Chef Mark.
Thank you, Susan. I appreciate it. We did want to show Chef Matt is here with us today, so we'll be going through some of that equipment in just a few minutes. First, we're going to start with a presentation, and that's the Decarbonizing Commercial Kitchens, Electric Appliances for Maximum Energy Efficiency. If you do have any questions, we ask that you please put them in the Q&A section. And we really promote everybody helping to try to solve or answer some of those questions if you do have the answers. But of course, if you do have any other questions, we will address them towards the end of the presentation. We always like to start our presentations with a safety message. We like to put some of the big points up there. Some of these are pretty obvious, but sometimes they need to be stated again and again so we remember in that time. At that time when it's important, right? Always have an evacuation plan, have that worked out before the situation happens so you know where you need to go. Of course, calling 911, knowing when to call, how long it's going to take is important as well. Some of these things are a little bit more obvious, but I admit I don't always do them, and that would be, you know, stretching, getting up and moving when you're supposed to, especially when you got long hours in front of the computer, or working over a table for a long time if you're cutting or, you know, doing food service work. Of course, reviewing an emergency plan, always having a go bag ready. Chances are you're probably not going to have enough time to do that, and you're in not probably the best state of mind at that time, so it's better to think ahead. Ensure proper ergonomics. That's kind of up there with that stretch, get up and move. You know, make sure that the world around you is a representation of what's going on in your mind. So I think it is good to you know, the cleaner, the nicer, the more orderly that is, the little bit easier it is to get up, move around, and be more productive. Here in California, earthquakes. I've been since elementary school. It's always been the same thing, right? Duck and cover, get under something. Hold on for the ride, you know, ideally something strong like a table, you know, something like that, something that's strong enough to be able to block any type of debris that might fall. And of course, the last one there, it's probably one of my favorites to complain about. I drive down the 5 quite a bit, going to Southern California. And that was probably the most irritating, is people on their phone while driving. So please don't phone and drive. It's dangerous. This is just a quick disclaimer talking about the information that we're doing the best of our ability to deliver you the most accurate information. And of course, because this is a recording, we have this authorization and release. Feel free to read all about this in the handout. I'll let you do that on your time. We do ask that you complete a survey for us. It's really important. These are publicly funded programs. So these are community dollars that are going into these programs to support stuff like this. And having these surveys is what helps us understand, you know, what the direction we're heading. If there's things that we want to work on, if there's things that we're doing really well and want to keep moving on those things, this is where we do that. We do ask, the survey has a bit of a quirk to it. So we do ask that, you know, the 9s and 10s are important, and 1 through 6 is important for whatever reason, and 7 and 8s are thrown out. We want your vote to count. So we do ask that, you know, that 9 and 10, if you liked it or you think it was informative, or 1 through 6 if you thought not. But, you know, we're obviously hoping for the 9 and 10s. There's some places also to get some great resources. As I said, these are publicly funded programs, and there's a lot of resources out there for food service. I worked in kitchens proper for about 21 years, and man, did I wish I knew that these existed for most of that time. There's a lot of information on there. There's other seminars about many different things. Some of it's, you know, maintenance, some of it's technology, just, you know, skill building. Of course, the rebates in California, we do have a very robust rebate program for qualified pieces of equipment. And then, of course, just many other resources, and the Try Before You Buy, a really, really great program. You know, in commercial food service, we definitely want to know what we're buying before we get it. You know, we want to make sure that equipment is going to perform correctly, it's durable, it's going to meet all of our expectations. And in this case, you can actually go and you can try out this equipment before making that purchase. So within that, we've also done some case studies. Lately, there's been a lot of emphasis on electrification, and so we've been trying to get as many electric kitchen case studies as we can, and we wanted to share one with you today because we thought it was pretty relevant, right? It speaks to some of the challenges that we're dealing with right now. And this one is this is in the San Jose area. It was a restaurant called Frankie, Johnny, and Luigi 2. It's been around since the early 50s. You know, through the years, it definitely, you know, just like everything, it needed a little bit of a facelift, needed a, you know, not necessarily rebranding, but they wanted to update everything. So it was time for a change. They closed it down, and they started a new design process, a rebirth. And part of what happened is they wanted to work with the city. So the city had some electrification reach codes and things like that, but they also had some other things going on. They wanted, you know, some more community-based services in the area. And so what, you know, being good pillars of the community, Frankie, Johnny, and Luigi 2s decided that they wanted to not only do the pizzeria, but they also wanted to incorporate a memory care facility on the property as well. So they had 2 different operations going. They wanted to keep their original operation and, you know, really hone that, update it, and then also incorporate in this memory care facility as well. So what's that process look like? Oh, there we go. First, Susan McDonald, somebody we've worked with for many years. She is a food service designer and a very motivated client. She's very knowledgeable and very interested. And I think that's the important part too. She's interested in understanding these technologies and how they can help operators in the modern day see what's available out there. You know, we think of automation as being sometimes this burger flipping robots, when actually automation can be anything that's really just passing off that work to a machine, right? And we've seen in many other industries the case that, machines are better at monitoring and, just repeating processes than humans are. And we've been slow to adopt that in food service, and it's made it quite a challenge. And I think there's kind of this misnomer that, excuse me, there's this misnomer that it makes you less creative or it boxes you in. When in actuality, I find it to be quite the opposite. It actually, because you're stabilizing processes, it actually gives you more time to be creative. You're not putting out the same fire over and over again. But also, if you know what the outcome is going to be, you can start manipulating that outcome. So that's really just a matter of drive and in what you want to do with those types of things, or with those processes. So Susan, she had this project. She contacted us here at the Food Service Tech Center. And we went out, did a site visit. We also did a design consultation. We're looking at the plans, we're reviewing, and then giving some advice. And then, of course, then we bring everybody in and we do a live demonstration. And we did this with the culinary directors and also the operators as well. And really went through, we basically made a mock version of what in the preliminary stages we had decided would be the best options for them to meet their goals. And from that, we got this here case study. So it's kind of a loop, right? And then we go back and we do this all over again. And the idea is that through workforce education and training, through these public programs, we're able to provide these services to operators and designers. And I think that's kind of a good lead into here, because the important note is we are unbiased. We do not endorse. We're not a dealer. We don't make money off of trying to tell you to go buy this, that, or the other thing. Our goal is data-driven education. We want to help you. We want to help operators, help designers make the best decisions for their operations, and really promoting that designer and client to make their own equipment choices. If you would like to read the case studies, they're available here at this at the frontierfstc.com. So we invite you to read the case studies. So design guidelines. These were the parameters and the guidelines for the design, for the build. Obviously, there's anybody who's been in food service or worked with plan check knows that there's many more than this, but we kind of just went to the high level here. So first, we had to satisfy the city's electric reach code. Energy efficiency was a top priority. One thing we do find when we're working with electric kitchens, or especially if we're going to convert something, a one-for-one swap is generally not a good idea. We'll get a little bit more into that in a few minutes. But energy efficient, when you think of energy efficiency, operators out there, think of there's a correlation between efficiency and performance, because your output is higher for the same amount of energy that's used. And if there's nothing wrong with making money in food service. That's okay. Make good food and make money doing it. And if you can get, simple math here, if you can get more out of that same piece of equipment, that just makes sense, right? I think there's kind of often this idea that energy efficient means that it's less durable or it's kind of chintzy or something like that. What I can tell you is that most of these energy efficient appliances were actually driven by chains. Large chains, and the chains do not want to have, and that's a good news for us, right? As if you're a smaller operator, because large chains don't want service calls. They do want to make money, and they want high performance, high efficiency. So the good news is that usually buying more efficient pieces of equipment, not always, and that's why we want to help educate you, will be a better fit for the business. There also, of course, needs to be flexibility. We want versatility in this equipment. We want to be able to change menus, or also just be able to ramp up and down operations and processes based on the current needs. Maximum production and minimum footprint, right? That's right back to that energy efficiency component, right? As we're saying, efficiency and performance are correlated. And of course, effective use of labor. Everybody knows, if you've ever looked at a P&L for a restaurant, you know that labor is by far your most expensive section of your P&L. And anytime we can reduce that, but also keep your kitchen safe, more comfortable, and be able to maximize that space, it's really critical. And of course, lastly there, right, we talked about all these things. None of that matters if it doesn't work, right? You can have the most efficient oven in the world, but if the door falls off, what's the point? It doesn't really work very well. So there is certainly a component there of dependability and serviceability. The good news is, luckily, going back there and talking about that part where a lot of it is chain driven, is that most chains are going to want a service territory. So, established service territories, excuse me, because they want to know that if something breaks, it's going to get fixed. Now, in a perfect world, that always works out, but it is worth doing a little bit of homework. And I really promote this idea of being proactive rather than reactive when it comes to getting your specifications ready. If you're in existing space, I highly recommend doing some of this legwork before the fryer breaks or before the oven goes down. Usually, when it's going to happen, right? You start getting more service calls. It's maybe not as accurate as it once was. Maybe it's just not meeting your standards and you're just kind of waiting. I would highly recommend going out and proactively working on this. The reason being is that when that time comes, every piece of equipment in a kitchen is absolutely necessary, and any failure, even something as small as a blender. Right? I used to keep multiple blenders in house as backup. Right, on a Saturday night, if you're preparing for service, your blender goes down, that can crash a whole service, right? Because those cooks can't do that thing that they wanted to do right then when they needed to do it. So these small little things are really important, and I think being more proactive, having that list ready, so when it does come time to pull that trigger, it's a little bit easier. And also, what you're going to get. So we'll dive a little bit deeper into what the cook line ended up looking like here. There's two different cook lines. There's one for the memory care, and then there's one for the pizzeria. So first up, we have the pizzeria here. And because we're unbiased, we tend to try to blur out any of the manufacturers or any of the known stuff. But that doesn't mean we won't refer to specific manufacturers at certain times, right? But we do pride ourselves on being unbiased and trying to give the most accurate information. So there we go. First up, we have high efficiency fryers. Of course, really, really important. Fryers are a great moneymaker, right? They tend to drive a lot of revenue. And I think it's where we often see some of the most common bottlenecks. The faster, the more efficient the fryer, the faster it cooks. Also, the more accurate it is and more repeatable it is. You can get programming controls, things like that, where it actually knows what you're putting into the fryer. It can adjust time based on what it is to really make sure you're getting the product that you want. You can have auto lift features. And of course, oil filtration is probably one of your biggest savers. We've seen studies where you can save upwards of $38,000 a year just in oil filtration, right? You can keep that oil for that much longer. And also, it's dangerous, right? I mean, carrying oil is probably one of the scariest things I've ever seen cooks do when they break down. Walking with hot pots of oil, you're just, as a manager, you want to get that over with as soon as possible. So anytime you can minimize things like that, it's pretty critical. High efficiency griddle, I would say, is probably one of the other things we find to be one of the most important or one of the biggest bottlenecks in the kitchen. That's a big giant, or that's your cooking surface, one of your primary cooking surfaces. So the more stable it is, the more predictable it is, the better, right? Because you can rely on it more, and it's helping to move volume and minimizing labor, right? Anybody here who's ever worked with a non-thermostatic griddle knows the trials and challenges of that. God forbid you ever touch a cook's non-thermostatic griddle's knobs or dials once they have it set in, because that temperature change is quite drastic and it swings around. Well, you can get rid of a lot of that if you are using high efficiency griddles with thermostatic controls. That's all taken away. They know what they're going to get, and now they can focus more on output. In this case, we have an 8-hob induction. They do a lot of pasta work and things like that, so they do need ranges, and that's what they have here. So they have 8 hobs. And a mini combi. They're using the mini combi primarily as a finishing oven, but of course, because it's a combi, it's very versatile. It can do a lot of different things. They can do smaller amounts of things in that oven while they're prepping or during production time. And then of course, demand control, kitchen ventilation, something that we have seen is much more prevalent these days. I have to admit, for most of the kitchens I worked in, we did not have it. I mean, I'm dating myself a little bit too, but I have to say, we have demand control here at the center. It is an amazing technology. It does actually allow your kitchens to be a little bit cooler, as long as your cooling systems are working, which is important because it allows that air to that cool air to come in and stabilize the space. So I really highly recommend looking into DCKV if you have the opportunity to do so. And of course, side panels. And this is something we learned here at the center a long time ago and have been a big supporter ever since. They are very effective at actually being able to improve capture and containment and keeping that cubic feet per minute on your hood, just maximizing the potential of that. So we talked a little bit about the fryer. It's going to go into a little bit more detail here. Here we have a programmable fryer with auto lift and auto filtration. What does that mean? So, this is a great labor saver. Yeah, auto lift does cost a little bit more money, but if the fryer is able to do that lifting, one, it's ensuring consistency once you have your settings set. And I can tell you, it's not like it's not rocket science here. Food, it is important to be consistent. But I think with a fryer, you do have a little bit of give. If your fries, you want them to come out like this. The fryer itself is a little bit better at programming that. You don't need to be down to the second, if you're within a few seconds. So if it does change slightly, it's not the end of the world with that. But the gain on that side is that you will get a consistent product every single time. And if you do have to make an incremental change, it's pretty easy to do so. These fryers are constantly taking temperatures of the oil. They know their own recovery time. So getting back to that set point, let's say it's 350, and being ready for that next load. Oftentimes, really high, these nice higher end fryers are actually ready for the next load before they're even done with the first cooking process. And that's important because when you're dealing with fryers, what happens is that if they can't recover and you're busy and the oil temperature keeps dropping, what that turns into is soggy French fries or soggy fried foods in general, or just a diminished quality, because the cooks are not going to be checking the temperature all the time. So it's better to let the fryers do that. And with that auto lift function, what that does is that allows one cook to be able to do more work. The fryer's doing some of that work for the cook. Now, I've heard people say, what about, you're taking somebody's job with automation? And that's true in some industries. I would say in our industry, that cook doesn't really exist right now, right? It's tough to find cooks. It's funny, I listen to people always saying, I got Matt over here shaking his head. Yeah, he's like, yeah, he knows what I'm talking about. Post-COVID, it's been so hard to find cooks. Personally, pre-COVID, it was pretty hard to find cooks. It wasn't easy then either. So I think trying to find solutions is really critical. And this is a great way to start thinking about incorporating automation into your kitchens. Auto filtration, of course, really important. Oil is one of those things where, it's hard to track costs in kitchens. You have a lot of different things you're trying to pay for. And oil is one of them. How do you break that out into your menu costing? It can be many different ways in how you weight that. But filtration, of course, obviously matters, right? If you can use that oil for just a little bit longer, or you can keep seasoned oil good for just that much longer, you're going to get a better product. So it certainly has a value. We jokingly call this the deconstructed high-speed oven. High-speed ovens are using typically like convection or high-velocity hot air and microwave at the same time. Some of you may have seen them at small coffee shops or things like that. We just called it a deconstructed high-speed oven because we had talked about high speeds and they decided that this is what they would rather go with. They're using microwave and salamander. So one of the big things we find with induction is actually speccing the correct, we'll call it durability or duty. And in this case, medium duty works well for them. They're just doing a lot of light pasta work. And what we do find too is that we want to make sure that we're actually adjusting or looking at, or tailoring, excuse me, the power consumption for the type of cooking that's being done. I think a lot of times we tend to want to hedge our bets and go with the most powerful thing. What we find with induction, that's actually could be a problem, right? Induction is extremely efficient. Your best gas ranges, 35% efficient. Your induction ranges hover anywhere between 88 and 92%. So it's not that they're too slow if properly specified, it's actually that they're too fast, they're too powerful. And what happens is if we add too much kW to that, it becomes a little bit overwhelming for the cooks. It's hard for them to be able to control that power. So what we find is actually it's better to lower that. So a lot of times if you're going to do high production, things like that, you're going to usually go 5 kilowatts or kW and above. And if you're going to be doing saute work or line work, 3.5 kW is right around 2200 kW is kind of the sweet spot. Usually when you're getting into that too, there are some heavy duty units that of course do that as well. But in this case, when we're talking about medium duty, one, we're talking about the durability. These are a little bit, these are a medium duty unit. And also the power is a little bit lower. And that's actually a good thing, right? Because if we have all 5 kW, that becomes a challenge in an all electric kitchen because now our panel, our amp draw is much higher. Well, if we can reduce that down, that just makes the kitchen design and the parameters a little bit easier. The challenge is a little bit easier, more manageable. And also the good in this kitchen in particular, right? We're trying to minimize movement. A lot of times, cooks are having to move back and forth to be able to get their prep. In this case, what we've done is we've put the chef base below, and what that does is that allows them to be able to move in a more vertical manner. Is this a hazard? This was actually for the photo, but I mean, storing pans up there is. The reason we brought this up is, people always wonder if induction is durable, if it's going to break. There's really 2 ways it's going to be, most common ways we see it breaking. One is heat. Actually, that's the most common. And that's actually just the heat buildup and them not being able to get proper ventilation to be able to cool the electronics inside. And the other is actually during cleaning. So we find that people drop things on them when they're cleaning accidentally, and that's usually where we see issues with the glass. But as far as, and that's why we put that as a hazard, because we've heard stories of cleaners dropping the pans on there. But I mean, that is what that shelf is used for. My guess would be that, during service, it's probably not a big deal, but, maybe just adjusting some of those procedures to, just account for that. And then finally, that combi oven is their finishing oven. So combi ovens are great for things like this. If you want to use shelf timers, you can, or if you just want to turn it into a really accurate, high-powered convection oven for finishing, that works too. The great thing about combis is that, one, that they're versatile, but also they are pretty efficient. So the recovery is fast. So when you're opening and closing that door, that helps a lot. And if you notice on this particular oven, the doors are configurable. So the handle is actually on the opposite side. So as the cook is moving left to right, they're able to open the door, slide it in, and then move back over. So it's pretty nice to be able to have something like that. And in this case, that actually all did not fit underneath the hood. With an electric kitchen, you can actually go ventless with certain pieces of equipment. With gas, you can't do that, unfortunately, because of carbon monoxide. That just doesn't work. So you do have that added flexibility as long as you're not having too many issues with heat to the space. So what's missing, right? It's a pizza place. The existing gas pizza oven, right? Well, the city worked with them, and they were able to grandfather in. This is the original oven that they had, and they were able to keep that oven. There are still, there's no such thing as a silver bullet out there, and I think we've kind of understood that perfection is the enemy of progress. And efficient gas equipment, there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you need to do at the moment. And it's about moving forward and understanding and making good decisions. And in this case, they were able to do that, right? They've made tremendous progress, and the city allowed them to keep their gas oven. I mean, it's part of what they were known for. They're an established business, so that ended up working out. So for the memory care side of things, a little bit different, right? This is a lot more production-based. And so the kitchen is going to reflect that. In this case, we have combi ovens, of course, for their versatility, but a little bit larger. This is more for heavier production. The kitchens are also designed in such a way where they are able to use, benefit from each kitchen during their off times to be able to help with production for the other. So that does help, or that affected the design of the other space, I should say. But in this case, if we're just looking at it from the memory care standpoint, they do have these larger combi ovens, better for not only production, but you can use combis for holding, things like that. So really maximizing the space. Having those high efficiency griddles is really important. So you are able to take more advantage of the space that you have. And in this case, they could use a smaller griddle and be able to achieve the same production capacity as something that's a little bit less efficient, but would have to be a little bit larger. Using smart tilt skillets are another great example of automation. So these tilt skillets are able to do a lot more than just what a traditional tilt skillet can do. And that's one, due to the programmability, but also due to the sensitivity. So if you look at older versions of tilt skillets, you usually would have to have a tilt skillet, and then you'd probably have to have a kettle, a steam jacketed kettle. And the reason for that is because tilt skillets weren't very good at controlling temperature. So you'd have issues if you're going to cook like creams or dairy products, they would scorch and burn. So there's a limitation there. And then on the other side, the kettles aren't very good at getting color. So you couldn't really do as much searing or browning or things like that. And so you'd have to have these two really large pieces of equipment. Well, these newer smart tilt braisers are able to do both of those things. And then with the added functionality of programmability, you're actually able to build recipes in to the unit, so it can help guide the cooks. It's also monitoring that process as it's going. So if you are making things like stocks or soups, your consistency is going to be that much better because the unit itself is actually monitoring temperature and things like that. It has feedback. You'll also notice that this is using, because it's more production based and also just it's making larger batches of things, bigger pots, what have you. They went with a heavier duty induction unit. And as you can tell here, I mean, the thing's pretty beefy. It can handle much more weight, and it also has an oven below to help with production. We like to point this out. This was for the photo, though. They just had to put something on the shelf. But normally, you probably wouldn't store your pots up here. And finally, they have the blast chiller. Really, really great piece of equipment. They've been in Europe for a long time. We're starting to see them. They're much more prevalent in the United States now, especially when you're doing things that require HACCP or any type of food program that requires a safety component, and also, quite honestly, for quality, right? If we can cool things down much faster, it makes for a much more effective operation. And again, we're kind of looking at that consistency component from the opposite side. Rather than heating, we also want to be able to chill things down, right? The art of food service is just the art of reheating leftovers, right? We're understanding a process, bringing it to a certain point, stopping the process, and then picking it back up when requested. And of course, that's a sliding scale based on the concept and what you're doing at that particular concept, or what your definition of quality is at that time. One thing we did want to touch on here is heat pump water heaters have been starting to be discussed for commercial food service applications. And while they're still kind of working out through the technology, the issue is not really, I guess, the technology. It's more right sizing for application. Anybody who works in food service knows that we use a lot of hot water. So recovery is a very, very important component to that. We want to make sure that we have enough hot water in reserve at any given time to be able to do the things that we need to do, especially with sanitation, stuff like that. In this case, what ended up happening is they put in this 54 kW electric resistance water heater. And in the manual for the water heater, it says it's designed as a recovery heater, not recommended for sanitizing water applications. But because Plan Check saw this big, huge water heater, it's doing what it's supposed to do, but 54 kW that's quite a bit of power, right? That creates limitations when it comes to the design process. And so we just wanted to make folks aware that this is out there. We're still working on this piece of incorporating heat pump water heaters. We're doing studies right now, but also using tanked water heaters. But one of the ways that they were actually able to offset some of that was being able to use, this is a high temp machine here, but using heat recovery dish machines. Pretty neat. So what we're doing is as a high temp machine, it's using high temperature water in the sanitizing process. And what it's doing is it's pulling out some of the heat that's left over from the sanitizing process and then using that to temper or heat the incoming water for the next cycle for the dish machine. The nice thing about that is that means in some cases, these can be cold water input only, so they don't require a hot water input. But also, we're just using less, we're just straining that water heater a little bit less, right? So we have more hot water in reserve. That means the water heater is not constantly having to heat more water. So a really, really great option. And in this case, you can also see that there's some savings there. Your total operating cost is, about $1,000 less a year. Pretty impressive. And then here we see our annual energy use from the heat recovery model is nil, right, compared to the standard model. Oh, there we go. So induction, cooking and holding, education and training. So we're going to walk around here a little bit with Matt and talk about some different pieces that we have here at the center. First, we started off with some tabletop units here. And Matt, please feel free to jump in whenever. But what we have here, the reason I show these is because induction can be a little bit misleading. We were talking about the power requirements and the kW and how strong they can be. And I think that can be a little bit misleading, right? Because sometimes we can have, probably most people are used to an 1800 watt unit. These are the ones you find in every pastry kitchen, right? Yeah, they're doing a lot of their egg work, great for doing like gentle work or just warming. But that same unit, this right here could be 3,500 watts, right? Or even 5,000 watts sometimes. They're a little bit larger than this. This right here is a dual hob unit. This is, I think, 22 on each one. So even though it's pretty compact, we're actually seeing that we can get a lot more power out of this. And it's not really much larger than our 1,800 watt units. To do this with another fuel would be quite difficult.
So is this something that you would kind of need to understand the overall usage of it, or what the application, or you look into the specs that you should be buying?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Okay. Right. That brings us back to that durability or right. use case. While they are certainly functional and able to do that work, I don't know that you would, this particular manufacturer also makes larger units, but in this case, we're just showing this one. Yeah, I don't know if you'd want to use this as like your medium duty like line right. To just work on every day. Maybe more of a robust like action station, or if you need to expand temporarily to do something.
Absolutely.
You could do something like this.
Wonderful.
And then, real quick, I did want to show this. These are pretty neat too. These are a little bit lower in wattage. I think you can do 2 or 3 of these on one circuit. Oh, wow. And these are warmers, actually. They're very simple. They just have, I guess 5 steps, but you can use them as like pot warmers. So if you're doing plating or things like that, you can have these on your plating area on your pass, and you can actually just hold things right on here.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, no worry about scorching or anything like that. Just
right.
Perfect constant. It's pretty low profile as well.
Yeah, and then when you're done with it, you can just put it away, and that area can now be a prep area, or
a lot of versatility. For something else. Yeah,
right.
Wonderful.
And then as we step over here, we have, of course, some more heavier duty units. This is the same heavy duty unit that we saw in the case study, but then we also have a back to front unit here that's a little bit more higher power. But much more durable, right? So you can even tap on the glass. You can tell that they're pretty beefy, pretty robust. And we don't really see, this is what you would see as basically being, a heavy duty unit. There's more manufacturers starting to come out with these.
Okay.
What we're seeing right now in the market is that there wasn't as much demand, but now that demand is increasing, of course, manufacturers respond in kind.
I see.
So we're starting to see more manufacturers looking at that, more manufacturers, kind of jumping into the pool and making heavier duty, medium duty. Light duty's kind of always been around.
Okay.
That's pretty easy to get, but I think as you start stepping into these bigger units, and I think that's something that's important to note, is when you get into these bigger units, you can actually have them be mixed. So you can have like 3.5 kW in the front.
Oh, perfect.
And be 5 kW in the back.
So almost like a French range, where you've got the versatility of like a low heat front and a high heat back, or vice versa.
So if you're doing a lot of line work in the front, great. And if you're doing like production work in the back,
man,
you should probably put a sign somewhere.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Just to make sure.
Yeah. Let everybody know. Now, is there particular instances with induction that you found that it's outperforming like a gas like kitchen or a gas appliance?
Yeah, great question. I think with induction, there's kind of a lot of misunderstandings about what it is, and a lot of people attribute its character, you know, it to being the same as like electric resistance.
Right.
You know, which is, I always call it like the glorified cigarette lighter.
Yes.
Many of you may remember
I-
cars used to have cigarette lighters in them.
Yeah.
Our car did.
Everybody touched it at one point.
I touched it.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
burned
You
it.
got to check.
Found
You
my
got to see
finger.
what's happening.
Right. It's great for that, I
Yeah.
guess, but not so great for cooking, right?
Right.
We also had electric ranges at our, when I grew up in my house.
Me too.
Right. And it was like this juggling act of trying to like turn the thing up and like move the pan off if you needed it, because it was going to burn. They're not very responsive, right?
Right.
It's kind of
Yeah.
just not a friendly way to cook.
Exactly.
With induction, it's not like that. Induction actually operates more like gas. So if you turn it down, it goes down. If you turn it up, it goes up. And then if you want to think about the kilowatts, is the same thing as like, you know, that flame, right? The more powerful the burner range, well, the more you turn it up, the faster it's gonna, you know, whatever it is you're cooking is gonna get to that target.
Okay.
The lower the kW, the slower it's gonna be. That doesn't mean that sometimes you don't want, it's not always a race to the top, right? You know, sometimes you want that gradual curve. And I think when you're looking at induction, the reason I like to bring these out too is it's not just about kW, it's also about the software.
Right.
It is about how smart they are. With some of these, you can arrose or braise or pan-sear and do a lot of different techniques with them. The detection, the pan detection is a little bit better. And also the intervals. That's a really important component that, especially when you're talking about high power to low powered units. With induction, it's stepped. So with gas, it's an infinite gradient, right? You turn the knob up and the flame goes up.
Right.
And then down. Well, with induction, you turn the knob and it's actually has these stepped intervals.
Okay.
And the problem when you start getting into either if you use too simple a units or too high powered units, it's you know, like I don't need 2 and I don't want 3. I want 2.5. You know,
Right, yeah.
3's too much and 2 is too little.
Yeah.
And that becomes a problem when you're
Okay.
trying to adjust those knobs.
I see.
So you can combat that maybe by going to a little bit lower power unit because then it's not so drastic,
Mhm.
or just more sensitive units can actually adjust and you know, I guess the more numbers, the better.
Right.
in that case.
But it seems also like the ability to control and have consistency between each of those steps might make it easier to create consistency in like recipe execution and recipe writing for new employees that come in and want to like get same results every single time. So we cook it at a 2 rather than saying put it on low heat because that's very objective.
Yeah,
So
that's absolutely.
That
You're right.
seems great from a personnel and training standpoint too.
Yeah, you have a hard number to say or hover around that spot, right?
Yeah.
I mean, cooks are beautiful, unique snowflakes, right? They all want to do it their own way, and that's
Exactly.
And there is some advantage to that, right? Sometimes you do want, you know, there is a little bit of nuance that's important, but you do want, you know, like you said, that's a very subjective thing. What's low heat,
Right.
right? What does that mean,
Right.
right? Is it the bottom third?
Right.
Is that different on this burner than it is on that burner? Because
Yes.
they behave a little bit differently. The nice thing about induction is it is pretty stable, right? You know, if you're going to be hovering around that 3, you know, if they're doing 2 or they're doing 4, but it comes out this, you know, there's many different roads to get to the same place. As long as they're doing it the right way, but they're still within that range, I think you're right. It is a little bit easier to explain.
Yeah. I love it.
You have a number to kind of wrap your head around.
Exactly.
I should also mention too that depending on what you're doing, I highly don't recommend this obviously for doing line work, but a lot of induction units can also cook by temperature. So
Amazing.
it doesn't necessarily mean that it's like, it's not hyper accurate, you know, but again, we're not making rockets here. Right. So, you know, it'll be good within a few degrees. It's not going to, I mean, some of them are good enough to work as I guess a makeshift circulator if you had to for doing like sous vide work. Probably not the best way to do that, but they will do it in a pinch, right? If you're just, I mean, it's just poaching, right? You're just doing low temperature poaching. So if it's something where you just need it to be within a range, I mean, there's plenty of people in the world who have done poaching with gas ranges for a long time and they're doing just fine. So I don't think that swap is too crazy.
Yeah.
Some units also have additional probes, so you can actually put probes into the pots, so they're getting a little bit more accurate feedback. They're adjusting. I think where I would see cooking temperature being the most beneficial from a commercial standpoint would be like if you're doing stock or soup production. You know, people walk by, they bump the burners. Sometimes, I mean, you always think about the burner going too high, but also there's those times when you come in and it's out and you're like, how long has it been out for? You know, and that's money sitting in the pot. So, you know, one of the issues too is that cooks get busy they can't pay attention. And
Mhm.
obviously as the volume goes down,
Exactly.
it's
Yep.
not the same amount of energy required to keep it at that temperature. So then
Yeah.
you start boiling, right? And
Yeah.
I always like to do the emulsion, you know, when you work Sunday brunches or you do things like that and you have to make hollandaise.
Yes. Been there.
And everybody has a million different ways to
Mhm.
fix hollandaise. And none of them work, by the way. They
Yeah.
don't work. They
Exactly.
always work for like 2 minutes and then
Yeah.
it's because nobody wants to make it again. It's
No. No.
so
Especially in quantities like that.
right. Although, so when you break an emulsion, right, emulsion is a mixture of fat and water. When
Mhm.
you break an emulsion, it's kind of broken. It's not really much you can do to put it back together, except for chicken stock. I have seen chicken stock boil and the fat emulsifies with the liquid, and I have never seen anybody be able to get that broken. Like it is done. Like the chicken stock is toast. It's no good anymore. It's gross, right? It just doesn't. That has bad mouthfeel.
Right.
It tastes bad, and that's from that rapid boiling action, right? Just mixing the two together.
Mhm.
Well, with the induction, the nice thing is if you're cooking by temperature, it's going to maintain whatever temperature that is, you know, pretty consistently all the
Mhm.
way down, right? Or at least even if it's not perfect, it's still better than just
Right.
a wing and a prayer, you know?
Well,
So
and I think from a safety standpoint, like back in the restaurants I used to work at, we had veal stock that would simmer overnight when nobody's in the building.
correct.
And it was on a gas little, not like a candy burner is what we called it. And it was on the lowest flame possible. Sometimes it went out. And then insurance liability for like having an open flame on the whole time that you're not supervising it was crazy. So this seems like something that I don't know if the insurance companies are keeping up with the technology, but seems like something that we could justify keeping something on overnight.
Sure. I recall being that closing chef
Yeah.
manager and going back in there like 100 times
Yeah.
because like I don't want to be the one who scorched the stock or burned the place down,
Or left
and you're
it-
like checking it to make sure.
Or left it off and it becomes a food safety issue.
Yeah, you got to throw. I mean, if you come in the morning,
Yeah.
you got to throw it away.
Yep,
Right. You don't know how
exactly.
long it's been off for.
Exactly.
So yeah. Well, and also it's just inconsistent.
Yeah.
So I like to use the airplane analogy, you know, the airline analogy, right? Of like, if it's in the air, it's making you money. If it's on the ground, you're losing money. There's no in between.
Okay.
And that pot is either making you or losing money. You have a lot of money wrapped up in that.
Yeah.
Not just for the what's in the pot, but also all of the things that you're going to have to do, you know, with whatever it is. If it's a stock, it's a base probably for a lot of different things.
Oh,
Now you got to
absolutely.
remake it.
Right.
Uh,
Loss of time, product,
Right.
little things.
you're messing up the production for other cooks, right? They
Mhm.
can't do the next thing that they need to do. So there's a lot of pieces to that puzzle. And
Yeah.
I think that that's where looking at different types of tools and different pieces of automation are really helpful.
Yeah, there's something down the line that I have a question about, but we'll wait till we get to it because that tilt skillet situation over there
Yeah.
has me thinking.
We're
So
almost there.
we're almost there. Perfect.
So moving over here, we have a griddle. This is basically the same griddle that was actually in the case study. The reason we brought this one out though is because there's an addition there that they're starting to come out with that's pretty neat. And obviously it's concept dependent. You know, for a long time, chain griddles or clamshell griddles, some of you may have seen them. There's the griddle itself, and then there's these things called platens that come down, and then they like,
Yeah.
you know, it's the soulless burger cooking of,
Yeah.
you know, of the chains. But you know, whatever, it works, and many people like it.
Mhm.
So who am I to dog it? But it was always, they're very expensive. They're very hard to maintain. They have to be calibrated and leveled, and you have to have technicians do a lot of that work. But there's a few manufacturers, and we just wanted to show one where you can actually get those units attached, and they're a little bit more manual, so a little bit more reasonable for us regular folk. And the cool thing is, you know, one of the issues with these units is that if you don't have them calibrated correctly, it'll just crush whatever it is that you're putting it on, or it doesn't touch and it's not really doing you much good. Well, they came up with the ingenious idea of just taking a little knob, and you can actually adjust the depth here. So you adjust it, turn the knob, and you're good to go. And now you can speed up your your cooking capacity is increased significantly by doing things like this.
Mhm.
And it's literally just bolts. So you can change the configuration. You can put it in the center. I don't know why you do that, but you can. You can put it on the right. You can put multiples on there. So a great way to really be able to expand your cooking capacity. Over here, this is just an electric fryer. This one here isn't particularly anything special, but one thing I just wanted to show is, you know, the difference between a gas and an electric fryer is that your gas fryers are going to have typically a heat exchanger, basically tubes that are going through the fryer. And while they do make some pretty efficient gas fryers, no doubt about it, We just want to show that sometimes, because we get that question about induction fryers.
Right.
Well, sometimes good old-fashioned electric resistance works just fine, right? The elements are right in the oil. So that heat transfer is much more efficient, much faster,
Right.
and we can get a lot more out of it. I will say right-sizing fryers is very important, especially for electric. You do probably want to test them out first.
Okay.
And again, a lot of that just comes from, the industry is still evolving, and sometimes it's not a one-for-one swap from KW to BTU.
Exactly,
So
yeah.
it is something to talk about. Now, Matt, you had some questions about our next piece here.
Yeah, because like with my background in Italian restaurants, I've cooked many a batch of Alfredo sauce and scorched it in tilt skillets that ran off of gas. And I feel like even on the lowest setting, like I've thrown out 20-gallon batches of Alfredo sauce. Does this help with that kind of lower end, like consistent, even cookings that would avoid that scorching?
There's actually an
situation?
Alfredo setting already pre-built into these.
Oh my God.
One of the nice things about these units is that the manufacturers have done a lot of work to kind of pre-build some recipes in, so you're not like starting from zero.
Yes. Perfect.
Some of the other things too, different manufacturers have different things. This particular manufacturer actually has water inlets. So if you're going to do pasta cooking for somebody who does a lot of pasta work, I can say I want to do a medium batch of pasta, and it'll actually pre-measure 4 gallons of water, bring it to a boil, tell me I'm ready. And then you have these baskets that you can, if you're doing dry pasta,
Right.
you put these on here. These are actuated, so they'll actually lower down. I know, it's ridiculous. We're so spoiled.
This makes me feel like a dinosaur in the restaurant industry.
Yeah, right,
I have no
right.
idea this existed.
No towels, nothing,
Yeah.
nothing needed.
Yeah.
It'll lower down. It'll start the cooking process. When it's done, it raises it, tells you it's done, tells you did a great job that day. No, I mean, I did well. And they also have probes. So it is, of course, sensing temperature inside the unit, but they're also, if you're going to cook a roast, just added versatility. Some claim that you can use them as fryers. Maybe once in a while, but I would not try to probably use this as a main fryer.
It seems like getting the hot oil out of that might be a little bit more difficult than one of these guys. So
yeah, it's a little, but I mean, it can be done.
Yeah.
And this is a small unit. They make them all the way up in the case study. You could see that they had them. I think this particular manufacturer goes up to 40 gallons.
Wow.
They do have internal drains too. So plan check might still require floor troughs for them, but it's actually not necessary. And the cool thing too about them is that when you're pouring, they've designed them so that as it tilts, everybody knows the pot, when you pour it, like the liquid goes out and then it comes back in. So you're like moving the bucket or whatever. In this case, it actually stays in one spot. So you can put your bucket down or, put something on here, and as it pours, you
don't have to
do
follow the stream. That's amazing. Wow.
And back to your veal stock.
Perfect.
You just roast your bones, put them in here. It gives you the water.
Yeah.
Overnight, not a problem.
Yeah.
Right. When it's done, it'll just go into a hold mode and just hold it there at your 165 degrees or whatever you want to put it at.
Even better.
And you're good to go.
I love that.
Did you have any other questions on
No,
this
I
guy?
think that's amazing. But as far as like all this equipment, it seems like there might be a learning curve, which I think is,
Sure.
When we're dealing with restaurant people, there's so many people that have been in the industry for a long time. And as a business owner or a chef, like if you're excited about integrating this, but worried about how it affects your staff, and their hesitancy to adopt it, have you seen any like maybe SOPs around or case studies around like training and onboarding existing employees or new employees to adapt to this type of technology?
Yeah, I would say probably the single biggest support out there would be, one, we can help to some degree.
Okay.
But also using the manufacturer's reps and leaning on the manufacturers. You're buying their equipment. Chances are they're going to have a support network out there. And if it's a great question to ask before you make the purchase. So we highly recommend that. If you're going through a dealer, the dealers will know who the reps are. That's probably the easiest way to find them. But most of them do have some type of support in the area. And that's a great question to ask because a lot of times they will come out and do startups. They'll help you with that. They're actually paid to do that, to support you. Manufacturers pay them to do this. So we implore you to go out and use this as a service. We are running a little short on
Yeah,
time, so I
no,
want to
that's
make sure
fine.
if we have any questions, I want to have some time to address them. But we did have a combi here. We did wanted to talk about that. We have some classes online and on demand that can help with that. And pretty basic idea here. You have convection and steam and everything in between. They're nice because they're insulated. They are self-cleaning usually, so big labor saver there.
Yes.
They also have probes, so they have feedback as well. Same idea, that programmability. You can build recipes. You can run them just as a straight up oven if you want to. And I will say from the electric standpoint, the reason I really like combis regardless is that recovery time tends to be something that's a little bit still working on that in the industry with just straight up convection ovens.
Mhm.
It's not to say that it can't be done, and there aren't units out there that are doing it. But again, there wasn't a lot of demand for them before. Now that there is, they're of course working on that a little bit more. But with combis, they've already been working on that for a long time. So not really much of an issue with performance or recovery, things like that.
Okay. And just the space saving of having a steamer and an oven and all like multiple pieces of equipment combined into one.
Right.
With real estate being as much it is nowadays, like every square foot counts. So
Yeah, that's always our joke. We call it the kitchen of the future. It was just Europe's kitchen 30 years ago.
yeah, unfortunately.
And it really was. And that's not a bad thing. It just had more to do with the fact that they were already dealing with these constraints.
Mhm.
We're a big new country.
Yeah.
Chances are this is the first building on this spot, right? In Europe, that's not the case. It's probably a 500-year-old building.
Yeah.
They're trying to shoehorn a kitchen into it.
Yeah.
And so they had to do things to meet those, challenges. And this was just a part of that.
Love it.
And some of them have cool roll-away doors. And then finally, we just had a high speed. We did talk about them a little bit. So in this case, as we said there, it's convection impingement, which is high velocity hot air, and that's controlling texture. And then we have microwave, which is heating from the inside out.
Wow.
And what we're doing there is we're just trying to combine multiple processes in one as a method for finishing. And the nice thing is they're usually ventless. So
Yes.
these you can use outside
Okay.
your hoods, right? And it just adds a little bit more versatility. So those are just some of the pieces that we have here on display. Of course, we have a huge library of equipment, and we can always work with the manufacturers. Here, we'll step back a little bit. One of the lights turned off, so we're still in the light there. We have this huge library, and we can work with the manufacturers if there's something else that you're interested in. And we also wanted to see if there's any Q&A out there. Is there any questions that we received?
There was some interest in hearing
Are you there?
from
No,
Chef
you're-
Matt
Just kidding.
about his experience running
Not, I
an
could go on for another
all-electric
hour.
kitchen.
Yeah,
I got so many questions.
We
and
can just
it's
do
so
a loop around the room.
Yeah, let's keep going.
Okay, so it's not looking like we have any questions at the moment. I did want to take a moment and touch back on the survey real quick. I cannot hear her.
You can't hear
It
me?
might be, maybe the speaker turned off. Hold on one second, folks. I think our speaker turned off, we weren't using it. It's efficient, so it turned off to save energy. There it goes.
There we
How
go.
about
Susan,
now?
can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Oh, perfect.
You can hear me now?
Oh, okay. Thank you for the question. So if you didn't hear it, the question was, what's it like to run an all-electric kitchen? So my business teaches primarily residential cooks. So we offer cooking classes for home cooks. And the best part of it is everybody's very inquisitive. They have a lot of questions, a lot of hesitancy, but that gives them a safe space to work in and to learn. And I think from a commercial standpoint, even though I've never worked in a commercial electric kitchen, I can already tell there's cost savings when it comes to labor, linen cost, I'm sure from a cleaning standpoint and the amount of time it takes to clean, a comfortability standpoint of like the excess heat in the kitchen isn't nearly as bad, the noise, there's just a lot of different things that we could easily go on for another hour about. But I know from a electric standpoint in my business, it's very satisfying to be able to answer people's questions about it because people are interested, but just worried about the performance and also like, do my pans work on it? Like all the basic questions that you would expect from somebody interested in induction. But I love it. I think it's a great cornerstone of our business, and we don't see ourselves ever going back to a different format.
Oh, great.
Thanks.
That's a good answer. I did want to leave this up there because we do some through PG&E support. There is a try. You can take home or you can try out induction in your home. We'll actually send you the unit. So if it's something you are interested in, you can certainly do that through that QR code right there. You get it for 2 weeks. Try it out. We are doing some work also with commercial customers too. So please reach out and we'll see if there's something that we can do to help answer some more of those questions that, and you can explore some of the benefits that Chef Matt was talking about. We also do demonstrations too. So if you want to, actually try that stuff out, or you want to try it live, or you have some folks that you want to know a little bit more about induction, we can support you with induction demonstrations. And really quick, there are some resources out there and incentives. There's of course, the California Energy-Wise rebate program. And we wanted to, so the process is pretty easy. Find that participating dealer, you purchase the qualifying product, and right then it's an instant rebate. So it comes right off the price when it's invoiced. Wow. Yeah, pretty simple. And if you want, you can check out the qualifying products list. It's a great place to start if you are looking for pieces of equipment. And you just want to kind of start getting an idea, wrap your head around it. The list is just a great reference point. So these are just a few of the rebates that are out there. Great examples. $700 on a combi. So that's $600 per horsepower for your DC KV. In their case, they had 8 hobs. That's $2,000 in rebate. So hey, that's no chump change. $300 for that griddle, and $200 times 2 for their fryer because it's per vat. And I should mention griddles are actually by the foot, so it works out pretty well. And of course, $150 for our little refrigerated base there. Here's just an example of some of the categories. There's quite a few of them. This program has been going on for a while. So it's a great way to, again, like get an idea of what's out there and what's offered. Here's the resources. So if you have any questions, please feel free to call the number or go to the instant rebates, California Energy-Wise for instant rebates. And of course, go green financing, really important. That's a great way to see if there's somebody who can help support you during that transition. Ooh. So we definitely recommend checking that out as a program. And of course, transforming that kitchen, right? The electric kitchen of the future is available today. Please, if you could, I just want to put that survey back up there. We really appreciate your support. Thank you for your time. And thank you, Matt, for coming out.
Really appreciate it. Yeah, great to be here.
Great. Awesome. So thank you all very much. I know we went a little bit over on time, but we really appreciate you sticking with us and checking all this cool stuff. Thanks again. Appreciate it. Have a great day.